Hi class, in this video we're going to look at what method overloading is. Method overloading means that you can define more than one method with the same name. It involves supplying diverse meanings for a single method name. But to back up a minute, let's look at the English language. If you think of the word break, it could be used in many contexts. It could be referred to as breaking a window, break the bank, break bread, take a break. In all those examples, break really has, it's been overloaded to mean different things in different contexts. So the concept of overloading a method means that we can write multiple methods that have the same name, but they're multiple definitions. And we're able to do that as long as each method with the shared name has a different parameter list. And that last part's pretty important because otherwise, when you call the method with the shared name, it won't know which one to use. So it has to be distinguished by a different parameter list. So when you call an overloaded method, so for example, let's say I have a method called my method, and I have another version of my method, and I have a third version. So I have three different methods with the same name. The language translator will be able to pick out which is the appropriate one based on what kind of arguments I'm passing to my method. And that concept, that ability of a method to act appropriately according to the context, in other words, which one of those methods is going to be applying and used based on context, is called polymorphism. So that sounds very abstract and conceptual. So let's take a look at a concrete example that might help. So let's pretend that we have a company where we want to print the bill for our customers. And in its most simplistic form, we might write a method called print bill that takes a number. We'll call it balance. So we have one parameter of type number. Very simple method. It outputs thank you for your order and says how much they owe. So we're indicating the balance here. It doesn't need to return anything, so we just have a return here. Now we don't see a main method in this example, but once a method such as print bill is created, main can then call print bill as needed. Notice it, since it doesn't return anything back, we do have a void return type here. That's indicating that it does not return any value back to its caller. And that works very well. But there may be times when we want to print the bill, but in addition to the balance, we have a discount rate that we want to apply first. So we might have another version of print bill. Also doesn't return anything, has a void return type, but notice the parameter list differs. In this case, we have two parameters, and they are both numbers, but one represents a balance and one represents a discount rate. The discount is used to calculate a new balance, and that new balance is what's used to indicate the balance to the user. So the interesting thing is this is allowed. We can have multiple methods with the same name in the same program as long as the parameter lists differ. Continuing with this example, maybe sometimes we want to print the bill, but in addition to the balance, we want to pass in a string message that has some sort of customized message that we want to print for the user. So this one is very similar to the first, says thank you for the order. The last step is to print the balance, but in between those two steps, we also output the custom message that we passed into this second parameter. So here, our parameter list consists of two parameters, one number and one string. So we, at this point, have three distinct versions of print bill. and we're about to add a fourth. This print bill takes the balance, the discount, and the custom message, 3 parameters, and indicates the balance to the user, combining some of the earlier things we've seen. It uses the discount to get a new balance, outputs a custom message, and outputs the adjusted balance. So depending on the context, main may call any variety of these print bills. The key is that the program will know which one to execute based on the number and type of arguments that is passed. So in other words, let's say that main, for example, calls print bill and passes $50, an argument value of $50 to it. The program will look through and it will look at these versions of print bills and say, we don't have a match here. We don't have a match here. We're only passing in a single number. Aha, this, what we call signature refers to the name of the method and its list of parameters. This signature matches up to a call to print bill that passes $50. This must be the one I need to use. Overloading methods is never required, but it's very advantageous. So, for example, switching over to Visual Basic as a reference, when we use console.writeLine to display a message to the user, and you can play with this in your Visual Studio environment, you can output a number, you can output a string, an integer, a string, you can output a double. It has multiple overloaded method implementations for WriteLine. The convenient thing about that is when we use it, we don't have to worry about which version of the method we're using because they all have the same name, and we let the runtime determine which one to utilize. So overloading methods is often convenient. We don't have to come up with verbose names like print bill with adjusted balance versus print bill. We can just have multiple versions of print bill and distinguish them with their various parameter lists. So one thing we need to be careful to avoid are ambiguous methods. Ambiguous methods happen when you create more than one method with the same name where the parameter lists do not differ in the number of parameters or the type of parameters. So here's an example. Let's say we had main called print bill and passed in 2 arguments of type numbers. Here we have a problem because we have 2 different definitions of print bill and they both take 2 numbers as parameters. Now, one is using the second parameter as a discount rate, the other discount in dollars, but the runtime environment is not going to be able to determine or distinguish. So we have 2 matches, and that is not going to work out. It's going to cause a compile error because we have ambiguous methods. So make sure that if you use method overloading, each version of the method has its own unique signature.